Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the South Sudanese Women Intellectuals Forum. My name is Dr. Anne Lomole. I am a pediatrician and an infectious disease consultant, and I will be the moderator for this session. Before we start this discussion, I would like us to take a moment of silence to remember our colleagues who have died in the line of duty in various parts of South Sudan while providing healthcare services to the people of the areas where they were working. We strongly condemn these acts of violence against healthcare workers that are perpetrated in different areas of South Sudan. We condemn these acts as unethical and unacceptable. Our colleagues have provided services in different parts of our country, especially hard to reach places of our country, without any discrimination towards the people that they serve. And therefore, we should offer them both protection and we should offer them our support. It's a very sad situation, and we strongly condemn these acts of violence and discrimination against healthcare workers in South Sudan. So we'll just take a moment of silence in memory of our fallen colleagues. Please join me for the moment of silence. Thank you so much for taking that moment of silence, and may their souls rest in eternal peace. Today, we will be discussing malnutrition in South Sudan. We will focus on the risk factors, consequences, and some possible solutions for the current state in our country. The nutrition situation in South Sudan is very worrying, with global acute malnutrition rates that are above what is considered the emergency threshold in various parts of our country, including the Greater Upper Nile region, Northern Bahr el Ghazal, and Eastern Equatoria states. According to the most recent national data, nearly 1/3 of children under 5 are stunted, 23% are wasted, and 28% are underweight. The deterioration in the nutritional situation in South Sudan is worrying, and it's primarily due to physical insecurity, which partly hinders the humanitarian response. The effects of economic crisis and depleted food stocks are additional contributing factors. Some other factors that also contribute to the situation of malnutrition in our country are suboptimal infant and young child feeding practices, poor water, sanitation, and hygiene facilities and practices. Malnutrition has far-reaching consequences in both adults and children, and it affects productivity, immunity, and general well-being. Overnutrition and obesity is also an increasing pandemic, with easy access to processed foods and fast food, especially in the urban areas and in the diaspora. Nutrition and its consequences therefore lead to susceptibility to infectious diseases and lifestyle diseases like hypertension and diabetes. In South Sudan, due to political, social, and economic instability, it remains a risk for most of the population. It is therefore important for us to discuss some of the factors that contribute to the high rates of malnutrition in the country, understand the consequences and the interventions currently ongoing, and propose possible solutions for some of these risk factors and causes of malnutrition. I would therefore like to welcome our panelists who will be discussing various aspects of this topic and giving their recommendations. We would like to thank our panelists for taking their time to share their knowledge with us. And we would also like to thank the audience for joining us for this important discussion. And we are currently streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube. So feel free to share on all your social media platforms and to ask any questions on our wall, which we will try to answer as many as possible. We would also like to thank the UN Women and Aisha and Robert who are behind the screen as technical support. Thank you so much. And I would like to officially welcome all our panelists today, and I will go straight into introducing each and every one of them. So we'll start with Miss Rita Juan, who is a graduate of Afad University, where she attained her undergraduate degree in food and nutrition. She is a senior nutrition inspector in the National Ministry of Health in the Republic of South Sudan. Welcome, Ms. Rita. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Ms. Rita. Thank you for joining us. Next, I would like to welcome Dr. Idioro. Dr. Idioro is a practicing obstetrician and gynecologist. She practices at the Mater Hospital in Nairobi and has a bachelor's degree in medicine and surgery from the University of Juba and a master's of medicine in obstetrics and gynecology from the University of Nairobi in Kenya. Dr. Idioro is currently pursuing a fellowship in gynecological oncology at the University of Nairobi. Welcome, Dr. Idioro.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for having me.
Next, I would like to introduce Ms. Gladys Lasu. Ms. Gladys has over 12 years of public health and nutrition experience in conflict and post-conflict areas and in developed and underdeveloped countries. She has a bachelor's degree in food and nutrition from the Bluffton University and a master's in public health from Benedictine University in the United States of America. She has worked for over 8 years in the humanitarian setting in Africa and in South Asia with UNICEF, the international NGOs, and donor organizations to provide health and nutrition technical expertise to the ministries of health and implementing partners. And she has also been involved in the management of multiple donor funds. She has worked for over 4 years in the USA, primarily supporting the implementation of a supplemental nutrition program for women, infants, and children for the state and county health departments. She is also an entrepreneur and one of the 3 founders of Imatong Employment Solutions, a human resource and recruitment company tailored for organizations and companies in South Sudan. Welcome, Ms. Gladys.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to introduce Ms. Ganiri Jackslina, who is a nutritionist and a public health practitioner who strongly believes that health is much more dependent on our habits and nutrition than on medicine. She has a specialized interest in nutritional care and expertise in infant and young child feeding and has worked at Yambio State Hospital with World Vision International and Magathi District Hospital in Kenya. She holds a Bachelor of Science first-class degree in Human Nutrition and Dietetics from Kenya Methodist University and a master's degree in Public Health from Clark International University. Welcome, Ms. Ganiri.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Finally, I would like to introduce Dr. Lucy Meseka, who is a consultant pediatrician with over 4 years experience in pediatrics and child health. She obtained her Master of Medicine in Pediatrics and Child Health from the University of Nairobi in Kenya and her undergraduate degree in Medicine and Surgery from Upper Nile University in Khartoum, Sudan. She also has training in tropical and infectious diseases from the Southern Medical University in China and pediatric critical care from Hunan Children's Hospital in China. She's a former consultant pediatrician at Al Sabah Children's Hospital, and she currently works as an emergency nutrition officer for the World Health Organization, supporting inpatient treatment of children with severe acute malnutrition. She's also a part-time lecturer at the University of Juba in the College of Medicine, Department of Pediatrics, and an executive member of the South Sudan Pediatric Association. Thank you, Dr. Lucy, for joining us, and welcome. Great, so thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to the audience for joining us. We'll go straight into the discussion, and my first question will go to Ms. Ganiri. Ms. Ganiri, could you please define for us what malnutrition is, and could you please tell us what the types of malnutrition are and how one can determine the degree of malnutrition? Ms. Ganiri, thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much. Malnutrition refers to deficiencies or excess or imbalance in person's intake of energy or nutrients. It actually has 4 forms. There are 4 forms of malnutrition, briefly. We have the acute malnutrition. Then we have the, there are 2 broad terms that define malnutrition: the undernutrition or the overnutrition, because the word malnutrition means wrong dieting or wrong. It's mal is a French term, means something wrong, like how we say malady is like sickness. So malnutrition is just a term to define the two broad groups of conditions, undernutrition or overnutrition. So when talk about the undernutrition, this includes the stunting, the wasting. The stunting is the low height for weight, the wasting low weight for height. Then we have macronutrient deficiencies, and then now the acute malnutrition of kwashiorkor and marasma or marasmic kwash. So there are ways of determining the degrees of malnutrition. For the children, we determine the degree of malnutrition on like determine the degree of the SAM, the severe acute malnutrition. We have the mark. So normally the nutritionist check the mark of the child that is from 6 months and above. So below 11.5 centimeter, so the child will be determined as having severe acute malnutrition. The moderate acute malnutrition is from around 11.5 to 12.4. Then we have the at risk, so that's around 12.5 to around 13.4. These are using the anthropometric indicators. So for the adult, we use the body mass index, which is calculation of somebody's kilo weight over height in meters squared. So we do the BMI for to determine the degree of the malnutrition for the adult. Then as we are doing, because we have measurements like the mark for the adult, using the BMI for the adult, there are things we put in consideration. For example, because a woman who is pregnant might have, and a patient maybe who has edema may not be able to use their mark their BMI as a determinant for degree of malnutrition because of the excess fluids and for the pregnancy, the excess weight of the child. So yeah, that's how briefly I can say. Mostly the most common measures used to determine malnutrition commonly. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ganiri. I think what you've indicated is that for children, basically some of what we use to check malnutrition is different than from the adults. Adults, mostly we use the BMI, and for children, we do either weight for height, weight for age, and we also do the MWAC, which is basically a measurement with something that looks like a tape measure and has different colors that tell us how severe the malnutrition is. So thank you for that, Ganiri. So next we'll go to Miss Gladys Lasso. Miss Gladys, could you please tell us what are some of the global nutrition targets and how does South Sudan compare to the rest of the world and to Africa in terms of achieving of those targets?
All right, thank you, Dr. Ann. Just to start off by highlighting, people may take malnutrition for granted, but what statistically 45% of the deaths globally are actually accounted by malnutrition. So that's a very high number. So if you look at it, that's almost 50% of the deaths among under 5 are all caused by malnutrition, because many people take it like it's not a very serious, when you hear of other diseases, you raise your eyebrows, you're scared of it, especially among the children, the pneumonia and the malaria. But when we talk about malnutrition, many people are not alarmed or scared when they hear it. But just take note that it's a very serious problem in the world, and it accounts for the 45% of the death of these children who are under 5. So looking at some statistics from UNICEF, WHO, and the World Bank that was put together for 2020, actually they showed that 1 in every 9 people is either hungry or undernourished. So if we put in a group and we nine of us, at least 1 is undernourished. And I'm also looking at obesity. I know that in South Sudan, it's not as common, but it's also something that some countries in Africa are having what we call the double burden of undernutrition. So what happens is you'd find that in that specific country, there's a high number of malnourished cases as well as obesity or overweight. So when we're looking at Africa, starting off with our own continent, when you look at the southern region of Africa and the northern part of Africa, you would find that there's very low malnutrition in those areas. They're a bit more stable countries, less conflict. They eat more processed food, and people probably drive more or live a very sedentary life. So then they end up more with the obesity side. So now delving into malnutrition, looking at it globally, actually, when you look at the world, the main two continents that account to the highest level of stunting, just to explain, is when a child is too short for their age. So this child may look very healthy, but then if you put that child, for example, you take a 1-year-old child and put several of them together, you'd find that on average, they should be around the same height, but you'd find there's a child that's way shorter than the rest of the children. And it's more of a chronic malnutrition due to poor, nutritious diet, and of course other factors like probably, illnesses, and also poor water access and condition and unsafe water. So you find that stunting, which many people do not think is a serious problem, may actually be more of a problematic issue than when the child is wasted, because it's more long term. So this child, if by the age of 2 years, you're not able to change their diet and they have access to healthy diets and safe, clean water, these children are likely to have impaired cognitive development, and which turns into very poor and difficulties in learning abilities. So, like in situations, you'd find a child in a class, they study, but they're always doing bad. They always end up, let's say, being the last. That can be as a result of stunting. It impairs their brain. Therefore, they cannot do as well in school like other children, which in turn leads to low income down the road, because I know we don't want to associate all, educational, doing well in education to wealth or doing well in life, but it's been researched and evidence shows that it's linked to that. So if you look at Africa and Asia, they actually account to the highest two numbers of stunting. So like in Africa, it's around 41%. And in Asia, it's actually more than half of it, which is 53%. As you know, their population is a bit more higher than us, so it ends up accounting for more. So when we go for wasting, now wasting is what's also very common in South Sudan. You'd see a very thin child. I know Ganiri explained a little bit about that, wasted child. So in wasting, when we're looking at also the world's, the two continents that suffer once again, which is Africa and Asia. And when we look at Africa, it accounts to around 27%, which is more than a quarter of, the children are wasted. And in Asia, it's around 70%, according to, the UNICEF, WHO, and World Bank. So if you look at it, these children with wasting, it's more acute. So this child probably is exposed to, lack of nutritional diet and the poor health factors, diseases, and in turn, you have to look at the other things of, WASH, like the water sanitation in South Sudan. And this child is likely to end up losing nutrients, and in turn, they lose their fats. So they end up being very thin and wasted at the end of the day. Another aspect that we look at is the overweight. I'm also looking at Africa. As much as we explained that malnutrition is high in Africa, there's also overweight. And in Africa, it accounts to 27%. So if you look at it, it's becoming a problem. It's actually as high as the wasting. And in Asia, it's around almost 50%, which is 48% of that. So if you look at this, looking at Africa, and we compare it globally, like wasting, you would see there's around 6.7% of children under 5. That's 45.4 million children. The number 6.7 sounds low, but when I mention the number, that's 45.4% is very high. And remember, that's you almost accounting to half the death of these children being wasted. And stunting globally is around 22%, which is 149.2 million. And stunting also happens in some of these, if you look at the Caribbean, they also have, but their rates are way lower than Africa. But after Africa and Asia, they kick in as the third in the list of, having stunting and the wasting. And something else that I just wanted to stress on is with the stunting, it is irreversible. So by the time your child reaches 24 months, which is 2 years, if they were young and they consecutively kept getting sick and do not get nutritious food, they are likely to be stunted. Therefore, this child, after 2 years, you cannot do anything about it to make these changes in their brain development. It would be a lifetime thing. So we definitely urge women, even if a child is 6 months or after 6 months or at 12 months, you can still work on it and reverse stunting, and the effects of stunting. So this is something to take notice, as a group. Then when we're looking at some global targets that also needs to be achieved. So the World Health Assembly and the SDG both have targets that has to be achieved linked to nutritional related standards. Like if you look for the World Health Assembly, by 2025, they wanted to ensure that there's a 40% reduction in children under 5 that are stunted. And anemia is also a very major aspect that we need to look at. So they would like to reduce that by 50%, especially for the women of reproductive age. I know Dr. Idura will talk in depth about that. Low birth weight is another aspect. Dr. Idura, I think, would also talk about that link to, pregnancy. They want to reduce that by 30%. And something they're also thinking about is childhood obesity is on the rise. The plan is, and the target is, they do not want to see any increase from what we already have in the child obesity, overweight and obesity. And also something else is increase in the rates of exclusively breastfeeding. I'm sure someone else would be talking about it. So they would like to increase it to 50%. Other countries are really struggling to even reach 20%, especially the developed countries. Having worked in the US, I've had to work with women. Literally, almost everyone would not want to exclusively breastfeed. Like, the clients I used to see when I started off my career here in the US. And as much as we're complaining about this in Africa, at least breastfeeding is natural. It comes natural to most of our African mothers. Of course, the challenge with breastfeeding is that they end up introducing other foods. When a child is under 6 months, they are just supposed to take breast milk only. There's enough fluids in it, enough water, enough fats and nutrients that you do not have to expose the child to any other water or drink. So I know also we'll get in depth about that. So it's something that also globally they want to enable that at least every country is able to reach 50%. I know it will be a struggle in other countries, but I hope we can all get there. And something else they also want is definitely not forgetting wasting. They want all the childhood wasting to be less than 5%. So if we're looking at this, we have a long way to go. The good news is there have been some progress from 2000, at least in the stunting. Stunting has been reduced since 2000 by at least 67 countries. So 67 countries had very high stunting. So then they went down to 33 countries, reducing it. So at least there's some progress in reduction of stunting, but we still have a long way to go. And when they calculate the target to achieving this, it's becoming a challenge. Also, of course, COVID-19 impact is also playing a big role in taking us all behind in the process. So that's in a nutshell just what's going on around the world and with malnutrition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gladys, for that overview, and also for uh, basically emphasizing why nutrition is very important, and how we need to look at both nutrition in terms of overweight and underweight, and we look at the aspects of obesity also and not ignore them. So in terms of those global nutrition targets, do you have any idea how South Sudan is faring in terms of statistics according to those targets that we have for nutrition?
So South Sudan, luckily, we've actually had some improvements despite of at times us feeling like we're not making much impact. You know, they had a South Sudan household survey in 2010 and stunting was 31.3%. Currently, as the data shows, in 2019 it's gone down to 15.9%. Honestly, that's a remarkable, a change. As much as some of us have felt we've worked there and we haven't seen much progress, statistics shows otherwise. So that's remarkable for all the nutrition workers. And also back then, wasting was 22.7%, but currently, as they're stating, it's around 15.6%. So if you look at it, it's also gone down, which is a very good aspect for us as well. And interestingly, when we're looking at South Sudan, they had a report recently, and basically the reports that's been released with the prevalence of malnutrition standing at 16.2%. These children who are severely, I know Ganiri explained about the severe acute malnourished and the moderate acute malnourished. So for the severe are the ones you're able to physically see, this child is really thin and wasted. But with the moderate acute malnourished children, you may not actually notice. The child may just look normal, not until you do an assessment using the upper hand circumference or the weight for height, then you would know that, oh, this child is actually severe or moderate. So when we're looking at the severely acute malnourished children, they're actually 12 times more likely to die than a well-nourished child. So a child who is wasted and a child who's healthy, that's a whole 12 times more. You're likely to expect that this child may die. And for the moderately acutely malnourished children, they're 3 times more likely to die than a child that's well nourished. That's in South Sudan. Now, the interesting thing is, when we looked at some surveys done in the refugee population, the prevalence of malnutrition is actually lower than out in the host communities where, the main community. So like in the refugee camp population, from the statistics, at least the prevalence was around 11.5, and a threshold is usually 15%. So the 15 means it's an emergency in that country. So if we stand at 16.2, that means we're already above the emergency threshold, which we need a lot of work as a country to put an effort to.
Thank you so much for that, Glad. It's quite a lot of detail there, and for also informing us that we, despite our situation and our many issues that range from instability and lack of security, including food security, we are actually on a downward trend in terms of some of those indicators. However, as you have noted at the end, we are at the emergency threshold and we still have a lot of work to do. So the next question will go to Ms. Rita, who works at the National Ministry of Health. Ms. Rita, what are the drivers, the main ones for malnutrition in South Sudan, and what are some of the enabling underlying determinants that are important to ensure good nutrition? How can this be improved in South Sudan? So the major drivers of malnutrition in South Sudan, and what are some of the factors that are important to ensure good nutrition, and how can this be improved in South Sudan? Miss Rita, you are muted. If you can unmute yourself.
Oh my God. Oh my
Thank
God.
you.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank
Thank you, Dr. Ann. Actually, there are so many drivers or causes of malnutrition, but in South Sudan, we have like almost 4 or 5 drivers of malnutrition. One of the drivers of malnutrition in South Sudan is recurring war and the conflicts, and even the communal conflicts that the tribal conflicts that people fight due to battles that causes displacement of the population, and people move from their homes, and it also affects them, the population, in terms of providing food to sustain the whole family. And then also the other driver is high level of food insecurity and poverty. That is instability. Um, that causes instability in the families. In the displacement also, because we are also cattle rearers and we also plant, as it affects the agricultural the livestock of the population. And thirdly, unhygienic living conditions. There are poor supplies of water and poor sanitation and nutrition. It causes illness that contributes also to malnutrition. Like Gladys was mentioned, some of the illnesses like malaria, diarrhea, these all can cause malnutrition. And then also here in South Sudan, late raining and flooding. Sometimes there's late raining. At the end of the day, you find that all the crops are damaged, and the land is so dry. And like last year, especially, there was flood, so much flood all over South Sudan, and it causes also damage to all the crops. People did not plant, and those who plant also, all the crops were damaged, and it causes malnutrition. Because in South Sudan, people are depending on the imported food from Uganda, and now if the flood comes like this, everything is just a mess. It's just a mess. Other thing is also these mothers, our young mothers, children are being married early, and if they are married early also, they become mothers, they become a child becomes a mother to a child, and this child cannot also take care of that child. It causes so much malnutrition. When you go to El Sobor Hospital, Dr. Lucy can also tell us in that one, you find that so many malnourished children. These are all the drivers of malnutrition. This is all due to the conflict in South Sudan and the war, and people are fighting over the the underlying determinant, this needs government political commitment from the government in the country. The government has to have political will and has to put also nutrition to be in the agenda of the government, and to also include nutrition budget in the in all the line ministries, in all the sectors, and to be approved by the parliamentarians. However, this can be improved by advocating. This can be improved by advocating of good nutrition through the parliamentarians. Because when you see nutrition budget, there is no any other budget, only salaries. That's why we are only working on emergency nutrition, and there is no money for, there is no fund actually for nutrition to cater for all the services, and we depend on the implementing partners. And then also we have to create awareness among the local communities on good nutrition and the importance of nutrition, and educating the public as well on the importance of nutrition and consequences of the lack of feeding of children in the 1,000 days, because this is the very good window of opportunity for the brain development for our children. When your child is malnourished, it can be retarded, even if you treat the child. Still, in the future, the child won't be like a child who was being fed properly. So we have also to educate the public, and there's need also to have a multi-sectorial nutrition guidelines in the country. And this one also will be done through government commitment, like I've said. The Ministry of Health is working hard, and everything for nutrition is only being done in the Ministry of Health, but there is need also to be having all this in the other line ministries, like the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Education, and Ministry of Gender. And there is also need to have a curriculum in the country. At the moment, we don't have a nutrition curriculum in the country. That's why you find that anybody just can come into the country and do whatsoever he or she wanted, because there's no curriculum in the country to guide us. And then at the end of the day, we find that somebody who is just who has studied economics or who has done accounting will just come and pretend to be a nutritionist and will not do exactly what is to be done to the malnourished children, or what is to be done to prevent malnutrition in this country. Because we have so many underlying factors that causes malnutrition in the country, and this one needs to be tackled. And then also men who get married to these young girls. Let's leave our young girls also to grow. Dr. Idero will tell us what is the importance of these young children. What will happen when you are still young, like you're 15 years, and you're married and you have a child. The child will be malnourished at the same time you're malnourished. And by this, we are causing malnutrition, more malnutrition in the country. In the Ministry of Health, we are working on malnutrition for under 5 and for pregnant and lactating mothers. But then also we have to reduce the rate of malnutrition through what I've said. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rita, for that. I think you've actually emphasized on some of the drivers that are completely unrelated to health and even food intake, in terms of even natural disasters that can lead to malnutrition. You've also mentioned the sort of issues between cattle keeping and farming lands, and cattle keepers going into farming lands, or floods destroying farming lands. And I think it's important to understand that truly, as you say, that there's need for multi-sectoral collaboration to solve these issues that are related to malnutrition, and it cannot just be a burden of the Ministry of Health or the healthcare sector. Now, I will come back to you, and you'll be able to maybe go more into details on what the strategy for the Ministry of Health is when it comes to a plan for the nutrition sector. But as you think about that answer, I will go to Dr. Lucy, who will give us further details on how to and define for us the types of malnutrition in children. I know Ganiri and Gladys have mentioned a few things, so you can just give an overview for that. And then from a medical point of view, what are some of the major causes and risk factors of malnutrition in infants and children in South Sudan, and how can this be prevented? Dr. Lucy.
Yes, thank you for the question, Dr. Ann. So I will just go straight to answer the question. So let me just start with a brief definition, as my colleague has been mentioned earlier. So malnutrition refers to deficiency, excess, or imbalance in nutrients or energy intake by individual. So types of malnutrition. So malnutrition addresses 3 broad groups or conditions. So we have, number 1 is underweight, and in underweight it includes wasting. So wasting, basically we talk of low weight for height, and then it also includes stunting, where we talk of low height for age, and we have underweight, where we talk of low weight for age. So as we go along our discussion, I will just give brief on how do we measure, and then what are the causes of these conditions. So the second type is micronutrient deficiency, and this is related malnutrition, which include micronutrient deficiency, and this is basically due to lack of important vitamins and minerals such as iron, which is important for formation of hemoglobin in the body, and then we have folic acid, which folic acid also play an important formation of hemoglobin. And then we also zinc, which is also important in of body. And we also micronutrients, because when you talk of deficiency, you also have this abnormality where excess of these micronutrients we talk about. And with this, you have a consequence of having this excess micronutrient. So the third one is overweight or obesity, as she has talked about. So overweight is defined as a child BMI or body mass index, which is at 85th percentile or less than 95th percentile. And then we also have obesity, and in obesity, the body mass index is be above 95th percentile, or is at 95th percentile, or it's greater than 95th percentile. So the percentiles are the measurements that are the standards that the WHO has in place, and we use this one to assess the overweight or obesity in children. So if we go a bit in undernutrition, as we said, we have in undernutrition, basically undernutrition makes children more vulnerable to diseases and death. And undernutrition, we have acute malnutrition or wasting, as I've stated earlier. So acute malnutrition, the child is wasted or thin, and then it occurs as a result of acute inadequate nutrition or diseases such as diarrhea that leads to a rapid weight loss or failure to gain weight. And then the child's weight for height is low when you compare to WHO child growth. WHO child growth is standard, where you take the height and the weight of the child, then you compare to the standard set score for this child. And under acute malnutrition, we have wasting, we have moderate acute malnutrition, and then we also have severe acute malnutrition. So in moderate acute malnutrition, there is a low weight for height, which is below -2 standard deviation of the median WHO growth standard, or MWAC is less than 11.5 centimeter. It's more than 11.5 centimeter and less than 12.5 centimeter. As has been stated earlier, so MWAC is a mid upper arm circumference. So for us to get it, we have the MWAC tape, which has different colors. And when you use it, then you can assess whether this child is having malnutrition, severe acute malnutrition, and basically when it's at red color. And then if the child is having moderate acute malnutrition, for example, of what we are discussing, the MWAC tape color will be yellow. And then if the child is at risk, the MWAC color will be at green. So, and then again, these children with moderate acute malnutrition, they face greater risk of morbidity from infectious disease, and also delay physical and mental cognitive development. The second one under wasting, we have severe acute malnutrition, which is a very low weight or height. And here we describe it as when the child is less than -3 standard deviation of median WHO growth chart, or if the mid upper arm circumference of the child is less than -11.5 centimeter. And then if the child is having visible wasting, or if there is presence of nutritional edema. So basically in visible wasting, you check at the front of the child, and then you also check at the back of the child. So at the front of the child, you get prominent ribs, and then you also check at the arms of the child where you can get the skins are loose, and then the thigh skins are also loose because of the lots of subcutaneous fats. And then at the back, you also see the scapula, the bone that are at the back very prominent. And then again, you also see the ribs very prominent. And then the buttocks also, you can see there is folds at the buttocks, and which we call as like body pant. So, and then a presence of bilateral nutritional edema. So the nutrition has to, the edema has to be bilateral or swelling for other people who does not understand edema. So it is bilateral swelling of the feet, and then it can also extend to the legs, the arms, forearms, and then it can extend up to the face, where this is a generalized swelling of the body or edema. So in addition to that, they may also present with dermatosis, which are skin changes that happens in these children with severe acute malnutrition. So, and the second one is a chronic malnutrition or stunting. So stunting is an impaired growth and development that children experience as a result of poor nutrition. There is a recurrent infections or repeated infection, and then there is poor maternal health and nutrition. And then also, in addition to that, there is a poor socioeconomic status, which may also lead to stunting. And then the last thing is there is inappropriate infant and young child feeding practices care in early life. So as you can hear from all of us, the panelists, we are focusing on infant and young child feeding practices because it is the most leading or one of the leading cause or risk factor for malnutrition in children. So these are the causes of chronic malnutrition or stunting. So children are defined to be stunted if their height for age is more than 2 standard deviation below WHO child growth standard median. So as we said, when we are assessing acute malnutrition, we focus on weight of the child and then height or length of the child. But when we are talking of stunting, now we focus on the height or length of the child to the age of the child. So this is how we can identify a child who is stunting. And then the last thing under this, we have acute and chronic malnutrition. So it is a combination of wasting and stunting. The child is underweight, and here the measurement taken is the weight for age, and when it is below -2 standard deviation, the WHO standard, that means the child is having chronic and acute malnutrition together. And going to major causes of or the risk factor of malnutrition in infant and children. So these are the medical causes. One of them is congenital heart diseases. So when a child is born with a defect or the anatomical defect in the heart, they develop this malnutrition because with the chronic diseases, the demand of the body increases, and then remember, these children sometimes they don't take enough, so they are at risk of developing malnutrition. And the other thing is we talk of hemato-oncological diseases. So here we talk of blood diseases, and then the oncological diseases, like when the child is having leukemia, lymphoma, all these causes or risk factor pushes the child to develop malnutrition. And then the third thing is other respiratory conditions, such as cystic fibrosis, TB, bronchiectasis. But cystic fibrosis is not commonly found in our country or in Africa as general, but TB is a common disease in the country, so it is also one of the leading cause or risk factor for these children to develop malnutrition. And then if we talk about bronchiectasis, it's a condition where there is excessive production of mucus in the lungs, and this prompts the child to develop infections. So with this, they have chronic lung problem, which may lead to malnutrition. And then going further, we have gastrointestinal diseases, such as inflammatory bowel disease. So in inflammatory disease, it do occur, but it's not common. Under this, we have ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. So in ulcerative colitis, you have like ulcers throughout the gastrointestinal tract, and this will affect the absorption of the digested food, micronutrients. and this leads to malnutrition. And then the third thing or the fourth thing we have is central nervous system condition or diseases like cerebral palsy, which normally occurs as a result of difficulty during delivery when the child got trauma during delivery, or sometimes if the child develop infections in the brain like meningitis, may also lead to brain atrophy, and then a child may become cerebral or may develop cerebral palsy. And with cerebral palsy, there is a weakness of all the weakness of the muscles in the body, including the muscles that is responsible for swallowing. So this child may have difficulty in swallowing, and this will lead to malnutrition. And not forgetting infectious diseases such as TB, HIV, AIDS, which is also one of the common presentations in our malnutrition wards. So HIV and AIDS also prompt the child to develop malnutrition. So I think I can stop here and over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Lucia. I like the way you have subdivided the causes according to the systems in the body, and also indicated that we should not forget infections, because they're some of the main drivers easily acquired that lead to this cycle of malnutrition that becomes very vicious if they are not taken into account and treated. We will go to Dr. Idioro, who will be representing the mothers as usual. Dr. Idioro, your first question is, what are some of the indicators of maternal nutrition? And are there any statistics on nutrition of pregnant women and women of reproductive age in low and middle income countries? How does South Sudan compare? And what might be the reasons to the statistics for South Sudan? So indicators of maternal nutrition and comparison in terms of statistics for South Sudan versus other low and middle income countries. Dr. Idioro.
Thank you, Anne, and I thank all those who have joined our discussion today. Straight to the point, as have been discussed by most of the colleagues here, you can see malnutrition is just associated both, even if it is in a child, so definitely it has come from a mother. So once a mother is malnourished, it trickles down to the child. And from the child, again, that trickles down to the community, as it was said actually, that it becomes like something which is inherited. Because actually, if the mother was malnourished during pregnancy, so mostly it affects the brain development of the child. Will come later in depth on the micronutrients which are associated with brain development. So, like if that child has issues with brain development, definitely the child will not perform well in school. And again, the child born of a malnourished mother, that child also carries on some of the malnutrition, and again will give birth to a malnourished child. So it is like, the poverty becomes like something which is being inherited, but actually it is not inherited, but because of lack of performance. So I think let me just give you some of the indicators, as I think most of the colleagues have said, which include obesity, overweight, underweight, and short stature. So actually it is said that women of reproductive age and children are the most vulnerable in regards to nutrition. So most of the data from low and middle income countries, actually most of the data are from the low income countries, and it showed around 2.2 million deaths which occur due to combined effects of stunting, severe wasting, and actual intrauterine growth restriction. Because definitely if the mother was malnourished, the baby will be restricted in growth. So the baby will not grow normal like the baby for a mother who has good nutrition. And And this leads to like almost 3.5 million deaths of maternal and child with undernutrition. So you can imagine these the figures are so high beyond imagination. And again, like in 2015, the FAO report showed that almost 795 million people are undernourished. And from those 795, 60% are from the low-income countries. So definitely from the low-income countries, you can put South Sudan in that, and we become part of that statistics.
What do you think some of the reasons may be for these numbers, especially in South Sudan? And what are some of the causes of this malnutrition, especially in women of reproductive age? Which of these causes are specific to South Sudan, and how can they be prevented and managed?
Yeah, ours is actually multifactorial. First of all, we have the insecurity which is around there. People cannot cultivate. I think somebody has said about that one. You have less food. Again, most of the food we have in South Sudan, you have to buy. Most of the people actually buy food. And now on the other side, money is a problem. So even if the little that we have is usually not enough, and it's not actually balanced diet at the end of the day. And again, culturally, like people in the village, I don't expect people in the village will be having malnutrition, because we don't need like sophisticated food that we call a balanced diet. So like the simple greens that we have, the simple meat that we get, once in a while is enough. But in the village, we have that issue of like priority is being given to the male. And again, this lady is pregnant. Now she's being deprived of most of the food because priority is now being given to the men. Now she ends up eating the remaining food, which is not actually enough for a mother, because actually during pregnancy, the demand is actually high, like it doubles. So like somebody who has a double demand and then like eats the same food or the same ratio that she has been eating prior to pregnancy. So in some societies, the what do you call it, the thigh for the chicken is being given to the man. And you see, this one is the one which has a lot of nutrients in it. So, and people actually again see it like it is normal when a lady start eating pika, and they say no, they waham oga kulutin because ashano wahman, lakin ma aslan de ma mushkila de min waham. That is malnutrition, because there is deficiency in iron that makes that lady to crave for the teen, which is actually wrong. So I think in the context of South Sudan, what we should do, we should prioritize women who are pregnant. Like most of you who work in NGOs, I don't know what the policy now is, but I think women of who cannot afford should be provided with food, at least the most nutrients. And we have even the beans. The beans are more nutritious. They have enough iron, and during pregnancy, women can even be supplemented with those beans and so on. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Idoro. I think, yes, you mentioned correctly that most of the panelists have mentioned some of the underlying factors that lead to malnutrition in South Sudan, especially in view of our current political and economic situation. It's mostly due to scarcity and also issues with poor sanitation and hygiene, and issues with getting the actual food that is needed, and even getting a balance in that food. So most of those factors have been indicated actually by most of our panelists. So I will pick up on something you had started talking about, the culture, some of the cultural practices that we have that may undermine nutrition. And I would like to direct this question to Ms. Ganiri. Ms. Ganiri, what cultural practices have been known to influence nutrition negatively, and what can be done to discourage these practices. On the flip side, what are some of the positive social and cultural norms that can be encouraged to advance children's and maternal rights to good nutrition? Ms. Ganiri.
Thank you so much. Yeah, according to discussing culture practices, the cultural practices, some are a bit sensitive to talk about because people are really passionate about their culture, but it does not stop us from talking about it. Like she has said, we have a culture of prioritizing our men, serve them first, serve them the best portion of their food. Then there's also some culture that I don't know if it's culture or ignorance. We mostly give let me say shorba to children. We are eating meat, then we give the child the soup of their meat. Yet the child needs their real protein to grow for their growth. Even if we are eating beans, we give the children the soup. Yet the child is actually the root seeds of the beans. So it's something we have to just the way we feed. We also have to talk about of course, like some cultures deprive women of certain types of food at a certain time. For example, my culture, we may say a woman does not have to eat eggs when she's breastfeeding or when she's pregnant because the child will delay to talk. So such practices deprive actually now the mother from having the nutrients, yet her nutritional needs are a bit high during breastfeeding and pregnancy. Then we also have our food choices. When we look at some South Sudanese, or us as human anyway, we get to tend to certain foods that we are used to. Even though I go to America, I still want to eat kudra. So I'll look for kudra in all the supermarkets around. If I don't have it, I'll feel I'm not feeding well. So the food choices we have, it limits us from having a diversified nutrition. It limits us from getting the best nutrients from whatever situation we are in. So our food choices also affect our nutrition negatively. Much as sometimes our food choices might also be able to help us have the best nutrition. For example, as Sudanese, we have a good practice of cooking combinedly. For example, someone is cooking the kudra, we'll add in some peanut. So we have added we have made the sauce a bit nutritionally dense, and it's healthy for us. Maybe somebody is, for us to eat, we cook the cassava leaves, we add in some peanut. Maybe somebody is going to cook meat and put in the kudra or okra. This one will make it a bit more healthier. So the cooking methods also can affect the nutrition positively. But when you talk about it, our cooking methods affecting our nutritional status negatively, we can talk about overcooking. Some foods, when we talk about vitamins, some of them are heat sensitive. So some foods are not supposed to be overcooked. You just, like our vegetables, where possible, you can eat it raw. If not, just stir fry it. Last time I also talked about the way we handle our food as a cooking. Yes, we wash our vegetables. We're supposed to wash vegetables before cutting, so that the water soluble vitamins are not exposed to water and they're not washed out. So the way we handle food as we are cooking in our cultures also affect our nutritional status, or the level at which we consume our nutrients. So sometimes we also have we have the cultures that affect our children in a way that children are not bold enough to pick some precious food or a fruit because they know it is for the parents. They first wait for the parents to eat, or they first wait for the elders to eat, then we are able to eat. Now there's this joint habit of us or South Sudanese eating in one tray. Somehow, the weak are deprived of from eating. You all come together, I still with the doctor and some other person. I may be fast to pick the biggest portion of meat, put it in my mouth and start eating. So, or I may be faster in chewing, compared to this other person. Even children, so some of them are bold enough. Some of them are not strong enough to eat. Maybe the one who's already on moderate acute malnutrition is already not able enough to have enough appetite to pick food faster. So it also affects our nutrition negatively. Then we also have, like the way I was talking about sticking to one thing, it's good for us to have the tendency of having adventure. Don't say if you're in Uganda and you see these people eating matoke and maybe they're not washing their offals well. Maybe that is a situation they're in that provide for them the right nutrition. So it's good for us to be able to adventure and accept the environment we're in, accept what people are doing. Like the way we say, when you roam, do as the Romans. So we also have alcoholism. I don't know if this is under culture or something, but we know there are people who are used to the alcohol. They know they have to drink. We have find so many people in South Sudan, we find people drinking in the evening, then they go in, have a binge eating. Now there's the pork. So it's also affects our nutrition. We know what alcohol does to us. It hinders the absorption of certain nutrients to the body. It also has a negative impact on overweight. So we have to put that into consideration. Yeah, then of course culture goes in with religion. People are very sensitive about their religion. It's not easy to talk about it, but we have to put in mind that sometime God wants you to be well. So you and they say take care of yourself so that God can take care of you as well. Sometimes we find somebody is maybe anemic and they're being told to eat enough proteins. Then you say, no, I'm in late season, I'm not allowed to eat meat. Yes, she needs that almond protein because it may have a better absorption rate compared to the plant protein on her. So we have to be sensitive about our religion and accept repentance because you can eat and understand the situation that God needs you to be healthy. Yeah, sometimes it's a bit sensitive about culture and religion because people are really passionate about it.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. And sometimes, yes, culture and religion make us make decisions that probably might not be so good for our health or that will give us benefit in the future. And it's something that we really need to look into. Now, thank you for that, Miss Ganeri. I will go straight to. Sorry?
I've missed something
Yes.
slight about
Yes.
our culture of saying women are not supposed to eat in public or eating with men. I don't know if it's something we have to talk about. You not expect a pregnant woman or somebody who is having diabetes to die because she has not reached home. Yeah, Jama. You don't say we have to adapt now the situation of which we are in, and this affects our nutrition also a bit negative most of the time. Yeah.
Oh, that's an unfortunate one. I don't think I've had that one. Maybe Miss Rita can tell us whether she's had that one as she answers the question on whether the Ministry of Health actually has a strategic plan for nutrition and who are the targets of this program and what strategies they have in place for that. And if there's any impact that they've had and some of the challenges they've encountered. Ms. Rita, have you heard of this, what Ms. Ganeri is talking about women not being allowed to actually eat in public when they're pregnant? Is it when they're pregnant specifically or women generally? And then you can tell us a bit about the strategic plan for nutrition.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ann. The Ministry of Health, yes, we have the strategy, though we don't have the policy at the moment, but we have developed 2 documents for implementing and harmonizing nutrition activities in the country. The 2 documents are, one of the document is CMOM guideline, And this document emphasizes on harmonized approach to the treatment of children with malnutrition, both severe and acute malnutrition. And this one is for children under 5 and the pregnant and lactating mothers. And inside this document also, we were supposed to have inpatient guideline, but we developed it also separately with the support of WHO. This inpatient guideline targeted children with severe acute malnutrition with medical complications. And we also have MIYCN guidelines. These MIYCN guidelines and the strategy is to address issues related to malnutrition prevention, and it involves counseling of mothers on good MIYCN practices in the community and in the health facility. And this is whereby what my colleague here, Ganari, is saying. For women to eat well in the public or at home. When you are pregnant, you are actually not eating for yourself. You're eating for yourself and for the growing baby in you. So when you are hungry, you can eat anywhere. Some of the cultures and the taboos are preventing the mothers as such. The children will not be healthy at the end of the day. So the Ministry of Health or the policy is saying you have to give your a pregnant woman has to eat twice a day. Like if people are eating, like have to eat one more meal. Like if people are eating in the house, they're having 2 meals. The pregnant woman has to eat 3 meals. Either you have a snack here in the middle. It doesn't mean that you have to have a very big meal, but you can take a cup of milk. You can take any fruit or a snack just in between. Even if you're in the office, you can eat. You are working, you can eat. It doesn't matter. Wherever you are, you can eat. It doesn't prohibit because it's for your health and the health of the baby. This MIYCN guideline targeted the pregnant and the lactating mothers. And at the moment, we're doing also very best in this in MIYCN because the country at the moment is moving towards prevention. We have been working on treatment all this time because of this war and the conflicts. We have been treating children, and malnutrition is just continuing. But we are focusing now on developmental nutrition, and we want to work hard on the prevention of malnutrition. That's why we have developed these documents. And the target of these documents, these are the under 5 children and the pregnant and lactating mothers, and some of the vulnerable groups like the HIV and TB patients and patients also with Kawasar. The strategies of MOH nutrition program, there's no fixed strategy, but we have a strategic work plan or annual work plan that is being developed together with our implementing partners, and we implement it together. We plan together and we are implementing it together. The guidelines harmonizes the management of nutrition program in the country. Before, each and every implementing partners, because we have like 68 implementing partners in the country, each and every partner comes into the country with the different guidelines. Like I come from Nairobi, I come from Uganda, I come from Ethiopia or from India. They come with their own guidelines. But we have developed these documents now. We are having a harmonized document in the country for management of community acute malnutrition and for prevention of malnutrition, for both treatment of malnutrition with complication and without complication, and for prevention of malnutrition in the country. And it is working, and it is best now in the country, and everybody is just working. These are the 2 documents that we have developed. And this, the challenges of these documents is that not all the health facilities are doing nutrition program. This is the challenge. Most of the time, and at the moment as I'm talking also, we have nutrition in the health facilities, and it's mostly being run by the implementing partners. And also there is a stand-alone nutrition program in the sites whereby it's also being run by the partners. But we are also working together with the implementing partners, and we are advocating for that's why we are advocating for the government to also put nutrition in their priority, because we need to have healthy children in the healthy nation. And this guideline also, especially the second guideline for the prevention, if we work well, we can also help the maternal mothers to be having to have good nutrition during pregnancy and during breastfeeding. When they'll be breastfeeding, like I said, when they're pregnant, they'll have to add 1 meal to their meal. And if they're breastfeeding, they have to eat 2 more meals for them to have energy. And also give exclusive breastfeeding to their children, in which we are now doing best also in the country at the moment. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Rita. That was very in-depth in terms of what the MOH is planning. Could you please, before we go to Ms. Gladys, who will tell us a bit about community interventions, could you please just give us a brief overview of what the intersectoral collaboration among various ministries and partners to tackle the issue of nutrition and food security is? Is there any collaboration, and what issues are focused on by each partner, and has there been any impact in collaborating with partners on this? And what are some of the challenges that you have experienced? Maybe 3 minutes, you tell us about the intersectoral collaboration.
Okay, there's a strong collaboration between various NGOs, the UN, and then with the Ministry of Agriculture, there is a collaboration, but not so much, because every ministry is just linking to whatsoever program and their mandate. But the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Agriculture has a little bit of collaboration. And as now we are also having this SUN program in the country, we are trying to also integrate nutrition program into other line ministries, into other sectors. And then also in the country here, the UN also, they are collaborating with the Ministry of Health and other line ministries. Like we are having UNICEF. UNICEF is the leading agency in the nutrition program in the country. And then we'll also have FAO, we have UNHCR, we have WFP, also working closely with the nutrition program and with the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Agriculture. When we come together, that, like I said, it's only the Ministry of Agriculture. We have the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Gender, but there's not so much collaboration. It's only with the Ministry of Agriculture. But with this SUN program, we are working towards that. WFP and UNICEF, they work together for the treatment of management of acute malnutrition and the treatment of severe acute malnutrition, and also providing funds to the Ministry of Health at the national level and at the state level, and also to the implementing partners in the country. FAO, they provide technical training on agricultural activities and provide seeds and agricultural tools. And they work closely also with the Ministry of Agriculture and sometimes also with the Ministry of Health. And UNHCR support treatment of malnutrition in the refugee settlement in the country. And when we come to WHO, WHO provides technical capacity on the management of severe acute malnutrition with medical complication, and Dr. Lucy is doing her best in that area. And so I can just say we have a strong collaboration with our UN partners, and a little bit collaboration with other line ministries, but we are working towards that. And I'll tell you more on the SUN program what we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rita, for that overview and indicating what the various partners are working on. Have you experienced any challenges in this collaboration? Could you mention like 1 or 2 challenges?
Challenges in the collaboration with other with other sectors, it's like it's mostly funding, because everybody will be having the fund is for my own for my own program. My mandate is different from the mandate of the Ministry of Health, because the Ministry of Health is working towards nutrition and the prevention or the treatment of nutrition. Meanwhile, Ministry of Agriculture doesn't treat, and so they don't have budget for that. That's the reason. And we are advocating. That's why I was saying in the beginning that we are advocating for the parliamentarians to, if the ministries include budget of nutrition in their ministries, let it not be avoided. Let it be passed, so that at least also we have a good nutrition program in the country, not only to be in the Ministry of Health, but also to be in other sectors like wash, agriculture, education, because also we have program with the Ministry of Education like the school feeding. And if they don't have money there, like one day I remember we were in a meeting, we had wanted to make staple food in the country. We actually don't have a food composition table in the country, and we had wanted to plan for that. And somebody was asking, how much are you going to put on the table, government? We have to cancel the meeting because we don't have anything. So if we advocate, and the government, especially our parliamentarians, now that they are there, we have actually the parliamentarians at the moment. They are also working closely with us, and we are trying to advocate, and they have come closely to know what the importance of nutrition is. It's only that now, and unless the committees are changed, then things will change. But otherwise, if they are there, still things will move well.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rita. And I think you have actually emphasized the importance of advocacy, even in non-health, to non-health professionals, especially the lawmakers, in order to ensure that nutrition is considered in every sector, including security, agriculture, even education. I think that's very important. What they call the multi-system approach to nutrition, which is a very important concept that we need to look into when we're thinking about nutrition in South Sudan. So I will go to Ms. Gladys Lasso. Ms. Gladys, you have experience working in the diaspora in nutrition programs. What are some of the strategies that you have seen that have been shown to work to tackle malnutrition, which can be replicated with success in South Sudan? And what are some of the community-based interventions that you have seen work? And how can the communities in South Sudan be mobilized to create solutions for the issue of malnutrition?
Okay. First and foremost, one of the major things, just linking it to Reader, from my experience from the US, you can tell the government take the ownership and the budget and the funding for this malnutrition program. What I worked with was called the Women, Infant, and Children Supplemental Program. And in that program, the funding is fully from the government. So if the government starts off being really the one in the leadership of the program and the funding, and putting aside some money and strategies along with it, then that would really have the other stakeholders that are in the country just go along, because then they'll be the drivers. But in South Sudan, what happens is the NGOs, the UN, and everyone else have the money, and they link it to that funding requirement, then they dump it in the country. So they have to, sorry, I'm calling it sweet talk. It's the reality on the ground. So they have to sweet talk the government. I've closely worked with Reader, so I have been on that side of sweet talking them with the director, that this is the funding we already have. How can we be able to work and insert it into the country's, work plan that she's talking about? But they do have a work plan, but now they don't have the funding. So at the end of the day, whichever wing you come from with the funding, then it's included in it. So if the government at a higher level is able to put some money and really agree budget at that high level and have a component of it, then that would really help. I also worked as a donor in South Sudan. And from my experience as a donor, what happened is the donors, we would have the money, and then we talk to the government about what is already put in. then we kind of insert it in. If you look at it, it should be the other way around, whereby the government already has something assigned, and then we just try to somehow top it up to meet each other halfway. So that's one thing that I know with time, hopefully, let's hope our 98% revenue from the oil soon will be trickling, and it can somehow be diverted to nutrition through our young parliamentarians. I'm seeing we have a lot of youthful young people that can be able to contribute and hopefully fight on behalf of the country. Another thing that have worked that I've seen in other countries, like in Asia, make sure you first get consent from the community leaders or from the community on what you would like to implement. You may think that you're, as an NGO or a donor, you may think you already know what the community needs, but at times you just come with your own activities and dump it on the community. So it should be on the other way around, starting off at the grassroots, sitting down with them, doing focus group discussions, being able to have some key informant interviews, especially with people at that grassroots that are being respected by the community. Like in South Sudan, I know we closely worked with the chiefs, and that was a very big, if the chief is on your side, your program will go well. You will not get any problem. But if you come with your program and dump it, or just come in and do your thing, they can really disrupt your program, which means there'll be wastage of money. You've already started it, and then they disrupt it. You don't know how you would do your donor reports on how you've utilized and account for that money. And another example from my experience from Asia, the religious leaders, the imams, they were mainly Muslims, the Rohingya refugees. So if you involve an imam, know that you're set. Your program would go so straight. The mobilization would actually be done by them. You don't even need to be going from household to household. You talk to the imam, they mobilize the men, and men involvement was an aspect that, if you look at nutrition, it's a big challenge. Most of the time, when you hear nutrition, you just hear, oh, it's a women thing, So if we use the men and educate them, then we'll be able to link them to their wives, to their mothers-in-laws, who can be very problematic at times, with feeding practices and all that, some of the challenges that are experienced on the ground. So using influential figures would really be good. I would take an example. There was a time they printed out some community t-shirts, and it reached the camp, the Rohingya camp, but the people at the ground asked, who gave permission for this organization to print this out? We just want a letter. They didn't want to discuss anything. They want a letter from the local government. If you don't have a letter, they confiscated everything, 20-something thousand. What do? Now you have to start involving. You end up going back to those people that are on the ground. So at the end of the day, always involve those ones. Now, coordination. In Asia, I was working in coordination. Working in the coordination body is a challenge. You have to get everyone on board, So you have to be able to establish really good coordination, body in the country in order to be influential. So like, the government, like for example, in South Sudan, we have the nutrition cluster. They have to closely work with the government. If you come as a cluster, you do your thing. Remember, we had all these experiences with Mama Rebecca. Then you get into serious challenges and your things would be on hold. So community aspect, let me just highlight on that. The community, from my experience, we've used community nutrition volunteers, community mobilizers in the different continents, and you can use them at the community level to be able to screen and refer your children to the facility. So, and also like in South Sudan during the war, an experience that we encountered during the war, when there was a conflict, the international NGOs and the UN left due to inaccessibilities. And you know who are left on the ground? The community-based organizations and the national level faith-based organizations. So a country like our country really need to invest on the capacity building of the community level organizations, because at the end of the day, if anything happens in the country, they're the ones left. It's just like a national of a country. The internationals will run away. You, the owner of the land, you stay there. So invest on that capacity building of the community organizations and all that. Integration of the nutrition activities is something that needs to be implemented. As Rita was telling you, not all the health facilities have nutrition services. So that's something that the government, I know by the time I was leaving, they were really working towards the integration, and also a partner in one county to ensure that, there's no duplication of service. Let's say one organization comes fighting for this same child, and this child is getting the same treatment. An example I always give is, if a child has pneumonia or malaria, would they want to be going to 2 hospitals taking medication? Nutritional supplies, it's a medicinal, it's food, but it's also medicine. So being able to have a child go to an integrated facility whereby they get a comprehensive treatment will really prevent us from lagging behind in progressing in malnutrition in the country.
On that note, these integrated centers could actually qualify to be like nutrition centers. What are those, and what activities occur there? Do you have any information on whether South Sudan has any nutrition centers, and why is it important to actually set up these centers? And maybe you can give us some of the challenges that come with setting up these facilities and your recommendations. 2 minutes, please. Thank you.
Okay. So as you're aware, the nutrition centers basically is where they go for both treatment aspect, and they also get some prevention, activities, interventions. For the treatment, I know we all talked of this, of the acute malnutrition aspect. So we have treatment centers whereby the cases that are moderately acute malnourished are being treated, and it's the therapeutic center. So it's a TSFP, and you get your children treated there. In between, when a child deteriorates, then you have to refer them to what's called an OTP. It's an outpatient therapeutic program. So you see, they're all interlinked. It's like moving from if you're moderately malnourished, you end up deteriorating, you go to the severely acute malnourished, or vice versa. You need to have a good linkage on the referral. Otherwise, you lose children in between who would not be treated, or who would not get the preventive care. Like with the moderately acute malnourished children, when you're discharging them, when you're letting them out of the program, because they are now well-nourished children, they need to get that, maternal, infant, young child nutrition, education, and counseling. So if it's integrated, that we have both what Rita talked about, the CMAM, the community-based management of acute malnutrition for the treatment, and we have the preventive aspect, the activities like the MIYCN, then we'll be able to have everything under one umbrella to have a very smooth referral and treatment system in the country. But that doesn't just happen in South Sudan. In Asia, even when I went, it was a bit of a challenge as even South Sudan. At least the health facilities, the nutrition facilities were integrated into the health facilities. When I landed in Cox's Bazar at the Rohingya camp, the nutrition facilities are totally standalone, and the health facilities were separate. So then it was actually a challenge. But by the time I left, we worked on a strategy that I and a colleague put together to ensure that they integrated. So it was actually good to see the smooth numbers. And you're likely to also see the rates of malnutrition fall. It's not that because you've done so much, but because no more children are getting duplicated treatments. The same child, different facility being added as a separate child. So just in a nutshell.
Thank you, Gladys, for that. We'll move over to Dr. Lucy. We talked a lot about children and actually integrating care for nutrition and providing the facilities. Dr. Lucy, you have been involved in working in very many areas of South Sudan in nutrition, especially providing inpatient care. to children who are affected by malnutrition. So having worked in various areas of the country, how from what your experience, how do different areas differ in view of the level of malnutrition, and why do you think there's a difference, and what can be done in the areas that are most affected?
Thank you, Anna, for the question. So, according to the recent IPC, which is Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, we are having like 21 counties that are classified under emergency with a global nutrition rate of 15 to 29%, and this is mostly in Greater Jonglei, and then we also have some in Bahar Gaza, and we have in Unity. And then we have 10 of them which are under crisis with a global acute malnutrition rate of 10 to 14%. So basically, with those 21% or 20 counties that are under IPC4 or with global acute malnutrition rate of 15 to 29%, the main reason of malnutrition in these locations are one, we have the food and insecurity, floods and insecurity, which are stroke conflict, which leads to displacement of the community, and this also affects on their agricultural activities. And then with floods, there is destruction of crops, which leads to decreased productivity or production of crops. So this has led to food insecurity. And then there is also loss of livelihood stock, and in line with insecurity and conflict, raiding, lack of veterinary services, lack of grazing, and then we also have pastorals and lack of water. So all these affect their livestock. As you know, some people are depending on this livestock, so this increases also the level of acute malnutrition in these locations. And then, of course, as I said, there is destruction of agricultural farm as a result of flood, and this has also reduced the production of crops in these locations. And not forgetting socioeconomic crisis, together with COVID-19 movement restrictions which occurred last year. So this all increased the prices of commodities, and then people are not able to afford food, and this increases food insecurity issues, and then increases the rate of malnutrition in those locations. So among those locations that are classified under IPC4, some of them are likely to develop famine, and this includes 6 counties, of which we have 2 in Greater Jonglei, or we have Greater Bibor Administrative Area, and then we have Akobo, this is in Jonglei, and then we have 3 locations in Warab State, the 3 Tonj, and we have Northern Bahar Ghazal, Will South County. So these locations have been have the risk of developing or becoming develop famine. So in these locations, and those are some of the issues that are related, or some of the risk that leads to such situation. So the focus now is in these 6 prioritized counties with severe food insecurity and increased level of acute malnutrition. So for us to improve, or what are we going to do is, number one, we need to strengthen nutrition surveillance for early detection and referral of acute malnutrition cases for prompt treatment. So this will help us reduce the level of acute malnutrition, and we keep monitoring the trend of malnutrition in the communities. And then number 2 is scaling up of nutrition services provision in those locations. So this is now ongoing. So people are now working towards scaling up services to see the gap and then cover the gaps in terms of nutrition and health, as we are talking of integrating nutrition and health. Because if we see most of the driving factors are related to health-related issues, so integrated health and nutrition services, people are working on it very, very hard. And then the third thing is we need also to ensure availability of supplies, nutrition supplies or health supplies in those locations. so that we support treatment of these children. So once a child is detected to have malnutrition, then this child is referred to a right place and receive treatment. And then, as I said, we also have this integration of health, cash, and nutrition services together. So in health, we are talking of integrating maternal, infant, maternal, neonatal child health illnesses programs. So these things that we need to put in place so that at least we reduce the level of malnutrition in those locations. And then, this is how we can do it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lucy, for that. I think you've done a very in-depth in the recommendations for those specific regions. I think we should focus on actually giving solutions that are specific to certain areas, because not all the issues are the same all over the country. So this also underlies the importance of intersectoral collaboration in preventing malnutrition and including various other sectors to help to prevent this from happening. So could you just give us a brief overview of why it's important to detect malnutrition early and what some of the complications are, both immediate, short-term, and long-term, and how it eventually affects productivity? And on the flip side, what the benefits of malnutrition or of good nutrition in children is, and what facilities are actually available for the management of children with malnutrition.
Okay, so early detection of malnutrition is important because it helps in early referral and initiation of treatment of nutrition cases appropriately. And then the second thing, it also helps in minimizing the risk of complications related to malnutrition, because once you detect malnutrition early and the child receives treatment, the risk of developing medical. And they also have, it provides critical that helps in monitoring the malnutrition for interventions and policy making. So the immediate complications of malnutrition, I will go through the acute complications. So minority children, especially children with severe acute malnutrition, they are at risk of developing hypoglycemia, which is a low blood glucose level, and this is attributed, maybe sometimes they have diarrhea and they are having loss of appetite. This prompts them to develop hypoglycemia, and then they are also at risk of developing hypothermia or immediate complications hypothermia. And because you see malnourished children, they lose all the subcutaneous fats, and this is important in generating fats in the body and in the heat in the body. And the third thing, there are the immediate cause is infection. With malnutrition, the immune system are affected. Malnourished children are immunosuppressed, so they are in risk of developing infections, whether it's viral or bacterial infections, different type of infections. And then the third immediate cause or immediate complication, we talk of anemia, because in the beginning we talk about micronutrient deficiency. So malnourished child may have micronutrient deficiency, and here we are talking of iron and folic acid, which is important in formation of hemoglobin. And they may also present with dermatosis. As we said, it's due to some micronutrient deficiency like zinc. Some of them may present with organ failure, and this organ failure is due to something called adaptive adaptation, where the body of this malnourished child started to shut down, and the little energy that they have is only preserved for critical functions in the body. So for brain, kidney, and then heart. So these are the immediate complications that they may present, and not forgetting the psychosocial changes or mood changes. These children may look like they are miserable, they are depressed. So these are immediate cause of immediate complication of malnutrition. So in long-term effect, we talk of this will interfere with mental and physical activity of the child. And then as we talked earlier, we said these children are always left back in classes because of this micronutrient deficiency, which are also important in the brain development of these children. And then there is increased risk of metabolic syndrome or diseases like obesity, especially in children who are born small for age. and then diabetes mellitus and hypertension. And they also have risk of developing cancers and Alzheimer's diseases and neurological and cognitive functions due to micronutrient deficiency. As I said, iron and iodine are important. So children may have school performance development delay, and then they have longer school stay. And when we go further in the importance of good nutrition, it helps in rapid growth and development of the child. It reduces the risk of chronic diseases, leading to overall health and well-being. And then it also prevents risk of malnutrition, both macronutrients and micronutrient deficiency. And it also helps in development of cognitive, motor, social, and emotional skills of the child throughout their life. So over to you. And then, in addition to what are the facilities that we have, so in the nutrition program, we are having 3 nutrition sites or nutrition facilities. So we have the targeted supplementary feeding program, and this is mainly for children who are having moderate acute malnutrition, children who are 6 to 59 months, and then we also have pregnant and lactating women with moderate acute malnutrition. And here, what is done is specifically those mothers and children who are giving specific energy, nutrient, dense supplementary food that provides children and the mothers, and then also children and mothers are provided with routine medical treatment in the outpatient programs. The second nutrition program that we have is outpatient therapeutic program of the facility we have. So here it's meant basically for children who are having moderate acute malnutrition without medical complication, and children are admitted in the program and managed. So once the patient has been recovered, the patient is now discharged home to the community, and where the community nutrition volunteers continue to support the mother and the child. And the third facility we have is the stabilization center, which is designed to provide inpatient nutrition treatment and a medical children with severe acute malnutrition and medical complication, and they have no appetite. So the medical complications that we admit these children with include if the child is having high fever, low fever, or if the child is having uncontrollable vomiting, or if there is loss of consciousness, convulsions, severe anemia, dehydration, and hypoglycemia. So those are the medical complications that they may present with. But what happened is that at the point of entry, once a child is assessed for severe acute malnutrition or whatever type of malnutrition is, they also do assess for a medical complication. For a child who is now diagnosed with severe acute malnutrition and has medical complication, these children now are sent to stabilization center for further management. I think I can stop here. Over to you. You are muted.
Thank you. Sorry for that. Thank you, Dr. Lucy, for the overview on the centers that are available and facilities that are available for nutrition. I think we're not doing too badly in view of what information you've given us. I will go to Dr. Idioro so that we don't ignore the mothers too much. So Dr. Idioro, what services are provided during pre and postnatal care that address nutrition? Is this the case in South Sudan? And what are some of the effects and consequences of malnutrition, both under and overnutrition, in pregnancy, on the fetus and the newborn? And how can we prevent or resolve this? So the services that are provided in the postnatal and prenatal care, and what the effects of malnutrition are on the fetus and the newborn, and what can be done.
Okay, thank you. Actually, we have antenatal care services, which are in Juba. I think most of the routine antenatal care is being run by midwives, and they're actually very good and experienced midwives, as much as I can remember. And during the routine services, usually there is supplementation of micronutrients, like we give mothers folic acid the first trimester. Then when they reach the second trimester, where then they will be given a combination of iron and folic acid, and then in addition to that, usually they are provided with calcium supplementation. So routine antenatal clinic usually caters for all these services, but in our situation, most of the women even don't reach there, or if they go once, or the one sometimes is actually late in pregnancy, when most of the things cannot be salvaged. So the effect of malnutrition and undernutrition and overnutrition in pregnancy, I think everything, like the rest have just said, it is just like intertwined together, and we can't take malnutrition in pregnancy as separate from malnutrition in the children or infants. So both are, let's start even before conception. Undernutrition and malnutrition, undernutrition and overnutrition both affect fertility, that is in the first place. So in either ways, there will be difficulty in conception. Now, when conception happens during pregnancy, in undernutrition, most of the time you will get small for gestational age babies, which actually those babies are most of the time affected, the brain development. And when it is overnutrition, you get big babies. So, and the babies have more chances of becoming diabetic or hypertensive later in life. And again, during delivery, all of them will actually implicate on their delivery. Like if we have a undernourished mother who goes into labor, there is that high chances of postpartum bleeding. They might bleed a lot because in the first place they were anemic. So this one actually contribute to maternal morbidity at the end of the day. And if they are overweight or overnourished, again with the big babies, you get high chances of obstructed labor. That is because the baby is big, and they end up with operative deliveries. So the risk of also cesarean section increases in such patients. So post delivery, again, you will get the mothers who are undernourished. The healing is a bit slow. So actually, they heal more or less than the normally nourished mother can heal. And again, with when they are overnourished, at the same time, like after delivery, again, recovery will be associated more with infection. So the complications go on and on. When coming to the babies, again, a baby who is delivered to a mother who is malnourished, definitely if the baby is small for gestation, the baby has more complications of the newborn. Neonatal infection, sepsis can happen. And when the babies are big, again, they have that high chances of getting hypoglycemia after delivery because they are used to that high glucose level when they were in the intrauterine. So I think in a nutshell, I've covered most of it, unless there is something else, and you can ask.
Thank you, Dr. Idiora. I think you've given quite a good overview of that, and also mentioned the complications in the babies and both the baby and the mother. Now, you mentioned something about nutrition affecting fertility. How does it affect fertility, and what nutrition advice is usually given to women who would like to conceive, and why are those recommended?
Yeah, again, if I'm to go more with overnutrition and obesity, even in undernutrition, you get there is a risk of anovulation. And I can say somebody might be getting their normal menses, but most of it is not ovulatory cycles. So you end up not getting pregnancy because, again, for you to conceive, you will need an egg. You need to ovulate. So once you are not ovulating, you will definitely not conceive. So this is how nutrition also affects our fertility. So the advice is we need pre-conception counseling and nutrition. So which is not normally practiced in South Sudan, but at least you have to visit a healthcare provider, even a midwife or a gynecologist or a medical officer, whoever, and tell them, I want to conceive, what should I do? Because again, the advice might include weight reduction if you are obese, and if you are underweight, you need to be supplemented early. And usually the most common supplement that we give preconception is folic acid, because again, folic acid, deficiency of folic acid is associated with more of congenital malformation, especially the neural tube development of the baby. So with all this, so we supplement folic acid most of the time, at least 2 months prior to conception, then throughout pregnancy. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Idioro, for that. I think you've actually answered one of the questions that Ganiri was supposed to focus on in terms of the micronutrient deficiencies and what are more common in women and children and some of the consequences. So Ganiri, Ms. Ganiri, if you can just give us an overview of what overnutrition is, what the causes are, and what are some of the consequences and management. And then you can talk to us a bit about a balanced diet, what the components are, and what some of the reasons we have for not having a diet that's balanced, some of your recommendations. So what is overnutrition? What are the causes? What are the consequences? What is some of the things that are used in management? And what is a balanced diet? And what are your recommendations for that as we close?
Okay, thank you so much. I think I will start with a balanced diet. It's a meal composing it's a meal made up of all the components of food, the carbohydrates, that is our rice, our posho, our sida, kisra, and all that. Then we have the proteins, the meat, the fish, the chicken, the legumes, beans, nuts, and the others, to be precise. Yeah, then we have now the fats, the oil we use for cooking. Then, of course, and some other fats that maybe I got from the animals. Maybe in South Sudan, we have the semen. We use it from milk. Yeah. Then we have the minerals and the vitamins. So the vitamins, we have the fat-soluble vitamins and the water-soluble vitamins. The fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin A, D, E, and K. Then we have the minerals. We have talked about the calcium, the potassium, and selenium and all that. So a balanced diet should have all the components of all these food of the food groups. So and we also have to put in mind that each person have their own nutritional needs. For example, somebody who is a laborer, a manual laborer, may have higher demands for the carbohydrates. Then when we look about the children, they have the higher demands for protein. So the children may have slightly higher demands for proteins, and their diet should be a bit heavier in proteins and the carbohydrates for energy, and of course the minerals. There should be everything. And the sources, of course, of the vitamins and the minerals that I was leaving out is the fruits and the vegetables. So we have to know that our food, we must include the vegetables and the minerals. Earlier on, I talked about cooking methods and how to preserve these vitamins. For example, the water-soluble vitamins are be sensitive to heat, and yeah. Then, not forgetting to be to have a balanced diet. We should never forget about the water therapy. We need water to keep hydrated and flush out toxins out of our body. Some patients, like the doctors know very well, patients maybe who are on apps, they need high amounts of water to flush out all the mist they're taking after absorption. Yeah, of course, we have to keep put in mind reduce salt in our food, reduce fats as we are cooking and all that. So then I will go now to the overnutrition. Overnutrition simply means you are getting excess nutrients compared to your body demands. Then this is a major cause of obesity. Yeah. So obesity. Then obesity has. Then you may have now the diabetes, the hypertension. The diabetes is because you are consuming a lot of sugars that your insulin is not able to respond to. Maybe the insulin becomes resistant or it's not being secreted enough. Then you may have the hypertension due to so many reasons. Maybe your salt intake is higher. Maybe the veins are already blocking because of high fat diet or high meat diet. So when we talk about overnutrition, we are also talking about excess nutrients in our body. And if I'm to say to manage the overnutrition, it's a bit easier. Though, okay, it's a bit brief because there are simple strategies. Change on your diet, increase physical activities. Then we also have to check with the doctors if there are some other hormonal reasons causing this obesity. For example, this overweight, like the hypothyroidism, may also have an effect on our weight. Increases that. Then we also have to adjust, like they always say, we adjust our diet with the guidance from nutritionists and a medical personnel vis-a-vis our physical health state. We just don't have to adjust our diet, not knowing what is happening. Yeah. Then when talk about I think you're asking about the nutrition management of malnutrition in general. We talked about the stunting. They already mentioned about changing of diet and treating the underlying cause of the stunting. Then we talk about the underweight, definitely. This now I will explain on it briefly. Talk about the micronutrients. Something that we had forgotten somehow is about the population control of micronutrient deficiencies. There's a way the countries are trying to combat micronutrient deficiencies. We talked about the vitamin A being fortified, some in our cooking oil. Most of this oil given maybe to refugees are fortified vitamin A to reduce on the deficiency of vitamin A in the population. We have iodine. Most of our table salts, almost 85%, is iodized to indirectly combat the deficiencies of iodine at a population level, not really when you go to the hospital. Folic acid, transmitted to pregnant women, and of course you hear most of the time, please sit in the sun for vitamin D. At least it's one of the nutrients that is free free. God gave it free. I can access the sun, and thank God, South Sudan, we are mostly not indoor people. So then when we talk about management of malnutrition, the severe acute malnutrition, of course, severe acute malnutrition with medical complications has to have the inpatient therapeutic care. Then with the inpatient therapeutic care, briefly, leave alone the medical conditions managed by medics. As nutritionists, we mostly start off with giving the patient, after assessment, of course, assessment of the nutrition status and everything. If a person is diagnosed with severe acute malnutrition, we start off with F75, which is a combination. It's just a formula of milk made up of skimmed milk, sugar, cereal flour, and vegetable oil, all that. So it's what we start off with until, in case of diarrhea, we have to use Resamol. We don't use the normal ORS, we use Resamol because we need higher content of potassium to have fluid retention because we are having the diarrhea. So we end up using Resamol as we are managing the severe acute malnutrition. Then we shall have, eventually the patient is transited to F100. Once the diarrhea stops, the patient, maybe the child is able to feed, and of course, after the appetite test, there are so many criteria that we have to fulfill before we transit the child or the patient to F100 as we are managing the severe acute malnutrition. Yeah, it's just it's a bit a detailed thing, but at least we have a glimpse of what actually how malnutrition is managed. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ganiri. I think this now, I can actually go to Dr. Lucy because you've mentioned a few things about the management of malnutrition in patient and the use of the F75 and F100. So, Dr. Lucy, does South Sudan actually have protocols for management of malnutrition? If not, which standards are we using? And what care do we usually give these children to ensure that there is recovery? And what do we do post-recovery?
Okay, thank you, Anna. As earlier that we are having pre-management level of treating children with malnutrition. In addition to that, we also have guidelines in place. We are having guidelines for treatment, community management of acute malnutrition, and we also have guidelines for inpatient management of severe acute malnutrition. So, in community acute malnutrition guidelines, or what are the strategies or the protocols that we have in that guidelines is that, of course, with community acute malnutrition, we have children with severe acute malnutrition, and we have children with moderate acute malnutrition. So, children with severe acute malnutrition are managed in the outpatient therapeutic program, and children with moderate acute malnutrition are managed in the supplementary, targeted supplementary feeding program. So, what are the things that, or what are the care that are provided for those children in those sites? In OTP, what is done is we have routine medication. So once a child is assessed and the child is having severe acute malnutrition without medical complication, this child is enrolled in or is admitted for OTP program. So what is done in this OTP or outpatient therapeutic program? One, they provide routine medications, and these routine medications include vitamin A, and we have albendazole or mebendazole, is for deworming, and they also provide other medication like iron, folic acid. This it helps in prevention of anemia. And then there is also preventive package that have been provided, like soap, and then they also provide long-lasting mosquito nets. And these are the preventive package. As we said, we are going towards the prevention of malnutrition, and we are doing integration of services. So, in addition to this routine medication that I given, there is also nutrition supplements that are also given. So for those children with severe acute malnutrition, we have ready-to-use therapeutic food or feeds, and this is normally provided on daily basis. It's one sachet per day, and they are normally given for 2 weeks. But because of issues, we need to reduce the spread of infection. Now it's been given for each mother should come back 2 weeks, and then they assess if the child from severe nutrition to moderate acute malnutrition, this child is referred to targeted feeding programs. Sometimes these children improve completely, and these children now are attached to the community where they are up with community nutrition volunteers. And TSFP, this is meant for children with moderate acute malnutrition without medical complication, And what is done is similarly to what is being done, which is what people are doing in OTP. So we have the routine medication being given, and then there is a nutrition supplement that are provided. So here we have ready to use supplementary food. So still this is provided the same way as in OTP, and then mothers are also called back to come after 4 weeks, where the child is reviewed, and then if the child improves, discharge to the community and follow up from there. So during their stay or during their treatment in the program, mothers are being provided with health and nutrition promotion knowledge. So mothers are provided with information on infant and young child feeding practices, hygiene, wash, and sanitation. So they have to wash their hands before providing the food to the child, visiting the toilet, or after feeding a child. And the infant, and they also have to be provided information on maternal, infant, and young child feeding practices, as we focus on infant and young child feeding practices, and then we focus also in breastfeeding and exclusive breastfeeding.
Thank you so
So
much.
basically, this
Yes,
yes.
yes. Just summarize a bit of what you were saying. Go ahead.
Okay, so I said these children are managed in three different areas. We said they are managed in outpatient therapeutic program, and they are also managed in targeted supplementary feeding programs. Targeted supplementary feeding programs are for children with moderate acute malnutrition without medical complication, and supplementary and OTP or outpatient therapeutic program is for those with severe acute malnutrition without medical complication. And we have talked on the routine medication that are being provided, or the routine care that are provided to the mothers in those areas. In addition to that, we also have those with medical complication are admitted in the facility, where the medical complication is treated, and the patient is also provided with a nutrition supply, nutrition therapeutic feeds like F75, F100. So once the complication are resolved, then this child is now discharged to outpatient therapeutic program to continue care from there.
Okay, thank you, Dr.
So
Lee. Thank you
yes.
for that summary. In view of all that you've talked about, I am interested in knowing from Ms. Rita whether there is actually any training and advocacy that is conducted by the Ministry of Health among health workers or the community on malnutrition. You've mentioned quite a bit of the things that health workers do within the hospital and to actually treat malnourished children. So, Ms. Rita, does the Ministry of Health have any training or advocacy for both health workers and the community on malnutrition and promoting good nutrition practices? And what are some of the challenges you've encountered as we move next to Ms. Gladys and then try and close the discussion? Ms. Rita.
Okay, thank you, Anne. In the training and advocacy in South Sudan, and especially in the Ministry of Health, we have training, and we are training people on the documents that we have, the CMAM guidelines, the MLYCN guideline, and the inpatient guideline prior to implementation. And this one is working. Though it's working well, and we train them all, even in the context of COVID-19, the Ministry of Health, together with the implementing partners and the UN, UNICEF, WFP, and WHO, we are training our cadres in the health facility and in the community. In the case of CMAM, though there is training, but still the malnutrition rate is not up to date because of the situations that I've told in the beginning. But when we come to prevention, we are really doing well in the prevention package when it comes to training, both in the normal situation and then in the COVID-19 situation. We are doing best. I can say we are doing best because now at the moment, every partner is working towards prevention, and then the rate of exclusive breastfeeding at the moment in the country is 68%. That means that we're doing best. And when we come to early initiation of breastfeeding, it's 77%. The only thing is the initiation of complementary feeding, which is 45%. But we are also trying to do our best to come to that. It was 2 weeks ago. We had a training on prevention package in which we train the managers on from all the three greater Bahar al-Ghazal, Greater Upper Nile, and Greater Equatoria on complementary feeding, and mostly on kitchen gardening and cooking demonstration, and also integrating nutrition into other sectors. We also trained them. That it happened last 2 weeks ago. The challenges are we train managers actually, and they moved either to other countries or they moved to other NGOs that their mandate is not what we have trained them on. But what our focus is now, the way forward, we need to train cadres who can really implement, and especially the nationals. We want to train the nationals so that they will remain, and we will also close that tap of malnutrition in the country. In advocacy, we were focusing mostly, we wait for World Breastfeeding Week. But at the moment, with the help of UNICEF, C4D colleagues, we work, we have advocacy through the radio and the TV. When you go to iRadio and Radio Bakhita and Miraya FM, you find that the nutrition colleagues from both UNICEF and the Ministry of Health, we advocate on nutrition and how to prevent malnutrition in the country. And it is working so best. And also next week, we will also work together with Action Against Hunger also to advocate on prevent malnutrition, and especially in the context of COVID-19.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rita,
yes.
for that. I have liked everything that you have mentioned, and even the advocacy that you're doing on the radios. And this brings me a bit to what Ms. Gladys Lasso was going to talk about. You mentioned first training managers and them exiting the country. So I think Gladys and Ganiri, that is a challenge to you to actually come back and use that knowledge of yours within the country. Now, the other thing you mentioned, yes, so Gladys will answer to that when I ask her the next question. So when you mentioned a bit about promotion of breastfeeding and the effect of COVID-19 on the nutrition programs, and Gladys was going to talk a bit about that. So Gladys, when it comes to breastfeeding, what are some of the policies that encourage breastfeeding? Give us some of the benefits of breastfeeding and what some of the reasons for not breastfeeding are, and what alternatives are available, what are the pros and cons, and maybe answer, Rita, why is it that we're losing so many of you to the diaspora?
Oh, thank you, Rita. It was definitely nice working with you, Rita. I guess, everyone needs room for growth, and I think some of us have given enough in the country. But back to Rita. Advocate for remote work for me, and I will be fully there for South Sudan as always. Yeah, so just to get into our breastfeeding, with breastfeeding, as you know, we do require an early initiation immediately or within an hour of birth. Which in South Sudan, I think South Sudan is actually doing better than many other countries around the world. However, the issue with South Sudan is that they start introducing liquids, fluids, or some mashed foods too early to the children. Like with my experience in Cox's Bazar, just to give an example, they also practice early initiation of breastfeeding, but there are some hinders. They give honey, apparently, back to our cultural beliefs. So they believe culturally that if you give honey to that newborn baby, they will turn out to have a very sweet voice and lovely voice. So it was very difficult to work with these mothers to ensure that they change that, behavior, which, as you always know, behavior change is a big, big problem, Then looking at the benefits. So looking at breastfeeding, we can separate it into three different aspects of the benefits. We have it being beneficial to the infant, to the baby, to the mother, and to the community I know many people probably would wonder, community, how does that come in? But for the infants, as you're aware, looking at South Sudan and it being emergency, looking at the floods, looking at the conflict, breastfeeding is very safe. As you're aware, if you're using formula milk, you're likely to end up having to use water. This can be a contaminated water. I'm now also discussing the benefits and I'm linking it to some of the disadvantages and the problems that come along with it. You would find that they would end up using contaminated water. As you're aware, even Juba as a capital city, we don't have safe water coming from the Nile Strait. So you would find a mother who probably is not breastfeeding, mixing it with water. And what does that do? Automatically, your infants get sick, and then with the sickness, the child deteriorates. We're linking it back to our immediate causes of diseases, causing malnutrition. Another aspect of this is the early initiation and colostrum. This yellowish first milk is really, really important as it helps with the immune system of the body of the baby. So they end up having these protective measures, and such babies are less likely to be sickly compared to babies that have not been breastfed. So aspect of things to look into. Another thing that we look at as well is that as much as we may think that at times mothers would say there's not enough breast milk. This breast milk is enough. It has enough water, it has enough fats, it has enough vitamins. So you do not need to give any liquid within that time. And with that, it ends up actually reducing the risk of these infants becoming obese or diabetic in life. So it does look very small, but it's really having a very long repercussion as the baby grows. Another thing just that I'm linking up, breast milk is easily digestible. So breastfed babies are likely not to be constipated. And linking it to this, they're likely to have also stool that does not have a lot of order. So you're likely to have the stool maybe often callous compared to a baby who's formula fed. You're likely to have the stool having a little bit more of a strong, smell and odor versus the other. So mothers, if you're motivated to have more of a nice smell, please ensure you're breastfeeding your baby. It also acts as a laxative in the process, easily digestible, so your baby doesn't struggle with, just emptying their stomach. Now, looking at the mother, it does help facilitate the placenta expulsions, So this helps a mother to be able to expel the placenta, and in turn, it reduces also the risk of bleeding after delivery. So for mothers, at least try your best to do that early initiation and breastfeeding that baby for up to 6 months, because it's very beneficial to you. And if you look at it, it also does prevent your workload. There's no more mixing formula. In our country, you have to go looking for firewood, warm up boil the water, let it cool before you take all that time. The baby probably is hungry and you don't have help in the house. You have to go to the garden. So it really does help, and it's very economical to the mother. You don't have to worry about money, gurush. I know all the foreigners know that word. So to my foreigners who are watching, so you don't have to use much money in the process. It's cheap, it's free, and you don't have to worry about it. So now linking the policies that are linked to this. Rita already mentioned of some policies. To the community, sorry. Before
just
I
1 minute, Gladys, as you wrap
okay.
up.
All right. So to the community, as you're aware, the cans of formula will be thrown all over, which means there's pollution in the country. So it does help with that as well, in the community level. So let me just link some of the policies linked to breast milk and whatnot. So we do have, of course, the maternal, infant, young child feeding guidelines that I was also a part of the development together with Rita and the rest of the team there. But something that's very major that's being used globally and it's adopted in South Sudan is the International Code of Conduct of Breast Milk Substitute. Breast milk substitute is basically anything that's from formula and milk and teats, anything that's not breast milk, but it's being given to a baby. So this policy basically helps to set standards on the marketing and promotion of the breast milk substitute. And in most countries, this policy actually discourages any unnecessary procurement, any unnecessary management, the distribution, use of commercial infants formula in the country. So what happens is it's supposed to promote support, ensure that there's optimal breastfeeding practices in emergency and in several countries. So with the BMS in the country, they also prevent any unnecessary, if you have to end up donating illicit donations, you would find, especially we've had cases with Juba Hospital and El Sabah, companies will come and dump formulas there. So it's something that I think we need to really strengthen it. I know Rita is here and she's been working on that. So it's been a tug of war in the country because companies and everyone comes and brings the formula. But there are exceptional cases whereby you can use formula. We advocate as nutritionists definitely for breastfeeding, but there are reasons at times you would find, like diseases, you would find a mother is sick. Some HIV mothers do not feel comfortable to breastfeed. Ideally, according to the international guideline, a mother who's on ARVs and the baby is on prophylaxis can actually continue to breastfeed her baby. But what we always say is give the mother a choice to follow her heart on what she would prefer to do. And it's something that we as nutritionists struggle with. So if a mother in that case does not feel comfortable because they do not want to spread the virus to the baby, you should respect that and just ensure that there's measurement in place on how best the formula milk can be mixed. As you know, also in our country, a lot of the women are illiterate. So you can imagine if it's not a ready to feed formula milk, you end up with water measurements and wrong powder, which means you're probably giving less of the formula, to the baby. We do not encourage that, but back to my comment, it is as a last resort. I know Dimitri Joanne is looking at me. What formula? I know as a nutrition we don't support it, but as a last resort, if it comes to that point, then or a mother dies and you don't have what we have options to. If a mother dies, you have an option of what we call wet nursing. Another female in the family or a neighbor can breastfeed, but ensure that you check for their HIV status because that can be an aspect of contracting it to the baby. And something else, relactation.
I know you're very, very passionate.
And some of us are very passionate about it.
You're very passionate about breastfeeding. I know you can talk for hours, but we're running out of time.
That's the whole training.
I think we'll have a session on breastfeeding only where Gladys and Rita and Gani will be on the panel, and you'll just talk until you're satisfied. So now to the recommendations. So we'll start with Ms. Rita, who will talk a little bit about the sun movement, and then go into recommendations, and then after Rita, we will go to Dr. Idioro, and then we will go to Ganiri, then Dr. Lucy, then Gladys, you'll finish. But you just go into breastfeeding, talking about breastfeeding again. So, Ms. Rita.
Okay, thank you very much. And when it comes to breastfeeding, now we wanted to talk more, and it's very interesting. Otherwise, now let me go to sun movement. SUN is a renewed effort to eliminate all forms of malnutrition based on the principle that everyone has the right to food and good nutrition. And the movement is unique by bringing people together, government, civil society, UN, donors, and private sector. And it is not a fund, and it's not an institution or agency, but the movement is strengthening political commitment, and it transforms ways in which people work together, both in nutrition sensitive and nutrition specific. In 2013, on the 6th of June, South Sudan joined the movement. That was in June. Then 6 months later, war broke out, and then we stopped this program a little bit. And when South Sudan joined this movement, some programs scaling up nutrition in South Sudan was a high level to the president's office, because there is a Food Security Council in the president's office. Now, when the Sun movement came in 2019, then the nutrition program is taken to the president's office, which is now Food Security and Nutrition Council. But again, it also collapsed because of the war. But in 2016, it was also revitalized. And when it was revitalized, we have 4 networks. Out of all the networks, we have government network, we have UN network, civil society, and the academia. In which the UN network and the civil society, they are very active and doing best in the country. Especially these 2 networks that I've just mentioned. In terms of funding, in terms of implementation, civil society is doing best, and the UN are supporting them. Now, for the government, the challenge is that funding is a challenge, because we don't get funding directly. It's only through the UN. And what we would like to do is to have funding directly to the government network and to the other networks. And the civil society, what they're doing at the moment, I was saying they're doing best in the country. The civil society have a plan of multi-sectorial nutrition platform, and we have introduced this SUN program in 2 states, in Torit recently, and then in Western Bahar as well. And soon we will also go to the 8 states, and we'll all have SUN program in the country. In the country also, we have developed a multi-sectorial nutrition strategic plan. But the only challenge is that because other line ministries are not working also in nutrition, and they don't have nutrition program, that's why it stands still. That's the challenge. But we will also work together hand in hand to make SUN movement move in the country. And as is there in the president's office, we should also revitalize it and make things move in the country. And then when we'll be talking about breastfeeding and prevention of malnutrition, everything will work best. Now let me conclude because of time. In my conclusion, at the moment in the country, we want to close the tap of malnutrition in the country. And how do you close this malnutrition tap? Close the malnutrition tap through prevention of malnutrition. And how do we prevent this malnutrition? We prevent this malnutrition when we focus on the 1,000 days of life that Gladys have spoken in the beginning. We close this tap through, we focus on this 1,000 days of life. Because if we have this stunting, no any other food can cure stunting. Therefore, we start prevention before stunting comes. And then, when it comes to breastfeeding, breast milk is the best milk that you don't find in the market. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you so much, Rita, also for summarizing by actually encouraging people to breastfeed, because it's available, it's clean, and it also gives you the mother and the baby contact that creates an emotional bonding, and that's not something you can get anywhere. And that is a gift that we've been given, that we can give our babies and our children. Dr. Idioro, recommendations and conclusion.
Today I'm in the middle of the experts for nutrition. So I've just read something from the comments, and someone was like, there is no money, we can't buy food. So whatever we are saying is just theory. But I want to encourage all of us as women of South Sudan. It's not theory. Now you have a small knowledge about where you can get the best nutrients and what to give to your children. and even you can be able to pass this message to your neighbors and everyone. So I don't think there is so much theory here. As already was said earlier, this issue of nutrition involves the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Agriculture, and the Ministry of Health, even parliamentarians. So at the end of the day, there is hope, and all these beautiful ladies are working hard towards good nutrition for all South Sudan. So in conclusion, to those in position, I think what I can just say, it will be good for donors and implementing partners just to prioritize maternal nutrition. I think, Rita, you have to take this as your responsibility. Thank you.
Actually, I'm the focal person for maternal, infant, and young child nutrition in the country.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Idioro. And seems like, Rita, you're the right person to talk to. And I think you will take Dr. Idioro's recommendation and focus on young infant nutrition and maternal nutrition, because at the end of the day, it is our mothers who are able to ensure that our children are well nourished, and that will also ensure that our future generations are actually well nourished and able to participate fully in the development of our country. If they're malnourished, then it becomes a problem because of the long-term effects on the cognitive and behavioral aspects of growth. So next we will have Ms. Ganiri. Ms. Ganiri, your recommendations and conclusions.
Thank you so much. I would just say for how to have a proper nutritional status. Roughly, we wrap it up by emphasizing on antenatal care, because as the mother is going in for antenatal care, she's able to get the information she needs, for the sake of herself and for a child. Then we need to have a balanced diet, which we already talked about already. Have a balanced diet according to nutritional state. Are you a pregnant woman? Are you a manual worker? Are you sedentary lifestyle? You just have to have a balanced diet. Then, of course, breastfeeding. We have talked about that. Then I can also talk about proper hygiene, hand washing, and handling of food with proper hygiene. I talked of water, drinking enough water to make everything, keep hydrated and flush out toxics and all that other importance of water. We also have to emphasize on deworming for proper nutrition. Deworming has to be well practiced, and vaccination. Yeah, Dr. Anne, you're doing a good job in that. Yeah, we have to talk about the vaccination and deworming. Then yes, we must take the information given from the available sources seriously, especially from the ministry. Definitely, by the time a ministry passes out some information, those posters, read it, understand, and practice where possible. Take the information passed out to us through the radios very correct seriously, and caution on other social media. That one, you have to consult with the ministry and other organs working for proper nutrition and good health. Then I can say exercise. Definitely, even though we eat good and we don't exercise, it's really not good to be a balanced nutrition health. We need to exercise and keep healthy. And yes, and there's nothing like we don't have food, we don't have money in South Sudan. We have the soil, it's very fertile. Try to plant something. Like I posted on in our group, you can plant anything anywhere. You don't have to be only in South Sudan, or you don't have to be only in maybe Western Equatoria, for example. Even in Juba, you can use sacks, can use recycle and plant something for yourself so it can have good nutrition and feed well. Thank you so much, and stay blessed.
Thank you so much, Ganiri, for telling us that actually some of the solutions lie with us, and we are capable, very capable of coming up with solutions for the issue of malnutrition in our country. However, truly there is need for security and peace so that we can be able to actually reap from this fertile soil that we have in our country that is able to actually feed the whole of South Sudan and even be imported to the regions and countries surrounding us. So, Dr. Lucy, please give your recommendations and conclusions.
Okay, so some of the recommendation and conclusion here, I would say let's improve child health by improving access to primary health care, water hygiene, and sanitation services. And basically, here we are talking on integration of services, health, nutrition, and wash. As we have learned from our talks today, that the drivers of malnutrition are related to those issues. And then number two is we need to improve maternal nutrition before pregnancy, during pregnancy, because it has a great implication for a child development in later life and adulthood. And the third recommendation, conclusion, I can say is we need to also promote growth monitoring services in our country. And the fourth recommendation is, I would say, let's also improve infant and young child feeding practices. And this is through feeding practices, through breastfeeding practices and children's diet in the first year of life. And here we talk of exclusive breastfeeding, as Rita has emphasized much on it. So let's advocate for that to reduce a burden of acute malnutrition in our country. And our focus is now preventing malnutrition in the country. I think this is what I can share, and let's advocate and strengthen the nutrition services in the country. Thank you, and thank you for hosting me for this discussion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lucy. I think, Ms. Rita, the ball is in your court for strengthening the nutrition services in the country and doing your best to actually advocate for the policies and the strategies to be implemented. Ms. Gladys, your recommendations and conclusion.
Yeah, so just to steer off breastfeeding, but talk about other things. Something that I would highly recommend is, as a country, we actually don't have a national nutrition policy. So, Ms. Rita, back to you. I know we started conversation back then, but I see it's still pending. So this should, I think, be a priority, because then there will be concrete actions based on a government mandate that would guide the government and the stakeholders to merge into the government overall plan and strategy. Secondly, looking at the intersectoral collaboration is very critical. Basically, if you look at it, it goes back to people are not able to afford these foods. After 6 months, you've exclusively breastfeed. What foods can these children eat? I know we have access to some vegetables and the staple feed, the maize, the asida, but a component that's really missing in our diet is the animal protein in our country. So I'm also trying to link this up. It goes back to the Ministry of Health collaborating closely with FAO and WFP. I see the e-vouchers. If there's a way of incorporating the animal products, because it's something that we've been able to do in Bangladesh. You can get fish and other meat products using the voucher. So it's something that the government can push for to ensure that this, diversity of food and dense, nutritious foods, and not just the staple. Another aspect is looking at agriculture. I know we have to closely work with the Ministry of Agriculture. I know we all have our mandates, and everyone is really about my mandate. I will need to achieve this. There are donors you have to report to. But I think if we can have the nutrition policy and put that mandate, then we can be able to have a very strong system whereby there's food production and sustainability, whereby it can be consumed in the country and make it affordable, to people in the country. Lastly, Don't forget to educate your women, because all our foods come through them. But as you're educating your women, let's not forget about our men. They need to know those nutritious food. So as so they don't end up eating the gideda, the chicken alone, the eggs, and they're forgetting the mother and the children. Once you educate the woman, you educate the man in the family will be a healthier family, because with them, they have the knowledge on how to best feed their family. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gladys, for that final conclusion. And you've introduced a new concept here, what is referred to as the social transfers, where there's resource redistribution to ensure that people who are affected, or areas that are affected, are able to get what they lack in their diet. And I think that is something to seriously consider. Ms. Rita, our appeal to the Ministry of Health is actually to come up with this strategic plan for the nutrition sector in South Sudan, and then find out ways of actually affecting the policies and ensuring that we have surveillance of malnutrition in the state of the impact of these policies and programs and the strategic plan for the government. So this is something we have to look into, and I'm glad that Gladys mentioned, and all the other panelists mentioned, the importance of intersectoral collaboration, because the truth is, we cannot solve this situation if we do not have peace, if we do not have security. There'll be no one to go and farm in the lands that are lying bare because of insecurity and conflict, and therefore we will not be able to provide enough food for our population and depend on foreign countries and imports to sustain our people, which I don't think makes sense, because we have the land and we have the human resource and we have the people who are willing to work on the land, and all we need is peace and security and stability, including economic stability. So I'd like to thank all our panelists who have joined us today, Ms. Rita Joanne from the Ministry of Health, Ms. Gladys Lasso, who is a nutrition specialist, Ms. Ganiri Jackstina, who is also a nutrition specialist, and Dr. Lucy Maseka, who is a pediatrician and a public health specialist, and Dr. Idioro, who is an obstetrician and gynecologist, and who will one day be one of our lead gynecologists in gynecological oncology. So I want to thank you all for joining us for this discussion today. And I'd also like to thank the audience, and I'd like to appeal to our panelists to go back to the comments in the comments section and please answer any questions that we may not have been able to answer in this session. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for taking your time, and thank you to the audience for also being here with us, and to the UN Women for Internet Provision. Until next time, please join us for another discussion on the South Sudanese Women Intellectuals Forum. Thank you and bye.